Design Review Board regular meeting for Tuesday, February 26th, 2013 is now called to order. Bill Gardner, here. Kevin Gray, here. Chris Schoenhart, here. Charlie Stevenson, here. John Stewart, here. Rita Bond, here. John Carroll, here. Here. Chair appoints Rita Bond in the absence of the vacancy from Mark Nakabata. We have a very full agenda tonight. I'm going to go very quickly through each of these items, and I'm going to try to kind of keep it down to about a 15-minute maximum for each one of these, with the exception of one, perhaps. And so I just ask you presenters to be concise, precise, brief, and we've had a chance to see this in advance. It was posted on the internet, the agenda plus the various items. But we'd like to go through this pretty quickly. So, with that said, the first item is the application of number 13-04 of Darcy Roy, National Sign Agent for Mitchell Auto Group, Inc., owner for a site plan amendment and sign permit on property located at 416 Hot Meadow Street, map F14, block 143, lot 003, zone B2. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? Well, I come for you tonight to seek approval to replace the existing monument-style sign that is out in front of the building now.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Darcy Roy,
okay.
National Sign, here on behalf of Mitchell Chrysler Dodge Ram. The existing sign is approximately 3 foot 3 inches by 8 foot 2 inches, approximately 26.5 square feet. Stands. Excuse
me, can I ask you to stand behind the lectern just for camera reasons? Thank you. Also, Hiram, do we have any minutes are available for us to look at? That's part of the folder.
I have a couple of them.
I have a couple. Two.
Well, there's 3.
Here's the whole package.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay. The sign that's out there now is about 3.5 foot overall height. The new sign that we're proposing is about 6 foot 4 1/8 inches by 5 foot 4 1/8 inches, or about 34 square feet. Stands at an overall height of 10 foot. The sign that's out there right now, the entire sign illuminates, and I know that illumination is no longer allowed. And what we're proposing is to really reduce the amount of illumination coming from the sign. So what I had the sign company do was, and I've got another handout here for you, is to show you that the background of the sign is all aluminum, and all that shines through is the lettering and the logos. And so for Chrysler, it's a total of 2.34 square feet. For Dodge, it's 1.29, and for Ram, it's 3.14 square feet. So we're reducing the amount of overall illumination by almost 20 square feet. So you're going to have the brushed aluminum with just the little logos and lettering shining through, and I can show you that. It's just highlighted where it shows the dimensions of those sections. Are there any questions about the design or comments about the design?
You finished with the
Yeah, I'll be done in the interest of time.
Hiram, just can you just verify or comment on the status of this? Is it an internal?
It's currently internal, that's correct. My understanding too, and Howard's been out for 2 days, so I apologize, but that the sign is going to be slightly relocated on the site?
It's going to be, they want it to be in the exact same spot that it is right now, but the existing foundation is not viable for this larger sign. And so they're going to take this sign down and then dig a new foundation right next to the one that's there right now. So it's not really moving location, I mean it's moving right next to where it is now. The plantings will either remain the same or be similar to what's there now, depending on how much they have to dig up.
Do you have a site plan that shows where that?
The plantings or the?
No.
No, I mean I sent to Howard just showing him that where the existing sign is, and the sign will go right next to it.
So I assume it's on,
What was that?
I assume it's on the Mitchell property.
Oh yeah, it's right in front of the building.
So would like to hear any comments on the?
So we're assuming that it's pre-existing and continues to be allowed that higher?
Yeah, that's the request.
I think it's an improvement over what's there.
Yeah, I think there's gonna, just to follow up the Kev's, I think the zoning commission would appreciate your comments, however they are with regard to that.
Right.
And it is a size increase over the existing?
It is a size.
And Hiram, comments on the size?
The size is acceptable in terms of the current regulations.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand what's going on with this sign. So we have, is there a post here? It's a little darker? Or
It
that
is
just-
filled in all the way to the ground.
It is filled in all the way to the ground,
Yeah.
okay. And is there a fourth panel there that's not going to be lit?
Correct. And I'm sure that's for the future. I mean, we don't have to put it there. We could remove it.
It's cheap.
So is there lighting also coming from fixtures on the ground?
No.
Or no, just
inside,
just
right.
inside.
So the total amount of illumination area is about 6.77 square feet, which is quite a bit less than what's there now. And the aluminum look is, you know, much more in keeping with today's styles.
Question. If I understand your description, the four rectangles are internally lit, correct?
But not the whole rectangle, just the lettering is going to come through. Not the rectangle, but just the lettering will shine through. The rest of the background there in the rectangle is aluminum.
And how are we getting the background reflection, if you will, from the
I believe they're push-through cabinet face.
I'm sorry?
They're cut through. Is that what you're asking? The letters are cut through the aluminum. And it has a vinyl backing.
And the only thing I wouldn't understand is how, if it's a light in the interior, how does it read black?
Right.
The vinyl's black.
Yeah, the vinyl would be black. If you look, did not on the second page? Actually, you have it right in front of you there. It sort of gives you the details here. It's painted aluminum exterior construction with chrome accents on cladding. Clear acrylic logos pushed through the cabinet face with first surface decoration vinyl, color digital print, and then it gives the colors right down here. Black.
Just what gives illumination to the black letters?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Right.
Is it black light?
A black.
No. I believe, I guess it's the black vinyl.
Yeah, but you wouldn't see it at night.
Yeah.
Black would be opaque.
Yeah, I would suspect that, and I don't know, you're the sign expert, but it certainly seems to me that the light is from behind the sign, and the letters are black, and then therefore stand out, but I'm not sure how the light does come through those letters. I don't see that.
You know, and I do the permitting, and I know very little about how the lighting happens and that sort of stuff. I very rarely get asked that. I can certainly come back with an expert from the sign company that can answer those questions.
Well, it's more of a technical business.
Yeah, it's technical and it's beyond
It must
my...
be done in other locations.
And from our point of view, too, the sign size would be the whole rectangle.
Yeah.
Do I understand correctly that I would call them the brand plates or the name plates are aluminum, and then the names themselves are cut out,
That's what
and
it
it's
says.
lit from behind?
Yes,
But
right.
you always see the letters,
correct.
and the rest of it is reflection against the column, is that correct?
I'll
That
withdraw.
again, that's-
I'll withdraw my comment. I can understand how that can happen.
Well, the issue to me is fairly simple. It's internally lit.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
that's the issue, and whether we want to comment on the height of it too, I think is another issue. And the 10-foot high monument. Given the proximity to the road and so forth.
It won't go any closer to the road than it is right now.
No, but it looks like it might be 30 feet off the road, 25.
Is there anything that we can specifically point to in the design guidelines manual that would?
There is in the appendix, there is a recommendation for size based on distance to the, from the main vantage point.
Size or height? Both, or just size?
Size.
No, but it says maximum height of
Says it.
4 posts 9 foot.
The freestanding sign says it is a primary sign at this main street entrance. Contains business name and street number. The maximum recommended area is a function of the distance from the street line as follows. 10 square feet if located within 10 feet, 16 square feet if located between 11 and 20, 24 square feet if located between 21 and 30 feet. That might be the one that is applicable. That's in the appendix under special application for review and procedure for signs, item number 4.
Page?
Page 107. In the new
Looking at the
guidelines.
new one, it's 60.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have that.
It's 60.
Oh, 60? Okay, thank you.
And it's also the maximum height of the sign is 7 foot.
Yeah. Again, the charge of this commission is not to look at the zoning regulations necessarily, but to make a recommendation to them. If they consider it as a right situation, then we would do that. But we want to make a recommendation, really kind of based on our guidelines, unless there are extenuating circumstances to change it.
Somebody asked a question about the 4th
Yeah.
space. Do you know whether that's absolutely necessary or whether the...
It's not absolutely necessary, no. Like I said, we can remove it.
So if the sign were able to be lowered by at least that much, that might help someone.
It's a foot.
That would get it below 32 square feet, which is, I think, part of our criteria. Maximum, 4 by 8, 32 square feet. This is 33.9.
Well, that's a zoning regulation, 32 square feet.
Right.
We had to establish this relationship based on proximity to the main vantage point, with 32 as a maximum size.
Two things that I know. One, it's interesting that it doesn't even mention Mitchell's. It doesn't have the business identifier, it mentions the brands. The other, it doesn't have the street address.
Street address.
We can add the street address. We can't add Mitchell's. I mean, we could, that would make the sign larger.
Yeah. But the current one doesn't either.
I don't think
The
Mitchell's...
building at all doesn't.
On any of that property, there's no Mitchell sign. It's Volvo and Saab and Mitchell.
It's branding from the Mitchell group. That's what they. Just interesting to do it that way.
Yeah, for identification, maybe the Mitchell's is not necessary, but I know that numeral is, the street number is something that is part of our recommendations. I'd like to kind of come to a conclusion on this. Rita, do you have any comments?
I think the sign is a big improvement over the past sign, and considering this is a, that area is so commercial, and isn't there one sign after another? There's a Volvo, so really, it's all of a piece if we were to consider this sign with the other ones that are there. So I would say this is not objectionable, except I can't quite understand how that lighting would work.
And I wish I could answer that question
Yeah.
for you. And like I said, I can come back
Right.
with an expert from the sign company
Right.
that can answer all of those questions for
I
you.
can't understand why it wouldn't light up that whole rectangular panel, but that's okay.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It only lights
I
up the
understand
letters
that,
and
I just can't
logos.
do
And
it.
I wish I could answer your
I
question.
know, I know.
I'm
just-
embarrassed that I can't, but
That's
I'm
okay.
not That's just not my area.
But I realize this is of a piece with the complex there, so I think in that context, I don't find this objectionable.
Does anybody feel we need more information on this to come to a motion? No? Okay.
Just a technical question. Are the dimensions, the height and so on that we're talking about, are they the signs only, or in this case, the monument?
Which stated here, the overall.
In other words, what I'm saying is the dimensions that are permitted, do they include the monument?
It goes to the top of the sign.
And that's the monument?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The existing one's 39 inches. Slightly smaller.
I actually think it's a little bit more than 39 inches. I think that's, because I think that's the sign at the box. I don't think they added in the bottom of that.
Okay, well, it should be the total height. We can certainly straighten that out, but that's what the application says right now.
As far as removing the fourth panel, it looks like they're waiting for their Jeep brand to come, which is going to be the fourth panel, so I'm not sure that removing it would make sense. And they already have it in their heading.
I was going to say, you have Jeep on your letterhead.
Well, I have a suspicion why the fourth one's there. But the question is to move this forward and expedite it, do we, and Hiram, this goes directly to what you were saying, I kind of like the idea of going with 3 instead of 4, and then commensurately lowering the sign height to acknowledge that. So I think the first question is, it's already lame, let's throw it out. Does everybody on the board agree with that approach or no? So that we can give them some firm direction here.
Well, I have no problem with the blank thing, because I think from a business standpoint, they're waiting to get another dealership in there. So for us to approve something without that, which means they'd have to come back next month to add one.
Right, I'm just saying, Hiram brought up a thing, we want to make sure that we're not, well, I think it's like, if we all agree with that, and I can understand that. I think, quite frankly, maybe they should have the flexibility to do it, because I think I know what's going to go in there, so. Or I should say, I wouldn't be surprised if what the fourth one was. And then they would just be returning to us, I'm saying.
Right, and they're more expensive to not have.
That's right.
Ahead, so I think it makes sense to go with the way they designed it.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick with what's been presented
Okay.
in terms of the size.
Let me just make sure I understand. The fact that it is currently internally illuminated, does that, how strong a point is that in terms of they are reducing the amount of internal illumination? But how, is that a point that we can make properly so or not? Because is it grandfathered in? You suggest that it's in a sense grandfathered.
Well, technically it's a new sign.
Yeah.
It really is. And your recommendation from this board, I think, is important to make sure that the zoning commission knows how you feel about it. Zoning commission could decide that it's transference of that nonconformity to essentially the same location if it's very close to that same foundation. I can't tell you how they're going to feel about that, but certainly your recommendation about it. If the only way to do it is to illuminate it, that's one thing. It's less illumination than it's there now, so it's a gray area, no question.
I would just weigh in then, Mr. Chairman. I think the sign is an improvement over what is there. I think it's a good-looking sign. I think it is fitting for the kind of business that they're in. And the fact that it is internally illuminated is kind of part of that. It's a little higher tech, which is, I find, very nice.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with both of you relative to the sign. But as I've said before on the same subject, if we say, okay, you can do this and light it internally, the next applicant comes in and we say, no, you can't, where are we going?
Well, as Hiram pointed out, there is some history there of having, even though it is technically a new sign, there is a history of having internally lit on that location. I don't think you could extend that logic to any project.
And the guidelines do say an exterior light source is recommended.
Yeah.
And then it talks about the internally lit prohibited by zoning regs. Light should be natural, soft lighted, directed toward the sign with no spillover. And I think that's certainly the case with this particular design. So there's some latitude there, I think, that you may have if you like.
Yeah, it might be that I guess Hiram's going through a redevelopment of the sign language or regulation, that might actually be. There might be provision within that for an internally lit sign in the future. Again, from a design standpoint, I wouldn't have an objection to that situation.
Don't misunderstand. As proposed, I think it's a handsome sign.
Yeah.
And appropriate.
Right.
But we've already in the past made exceptions
Yes.
For taking into account location and other commercial, around the surroundings. So we just did that.
Yeah. I'd like to move this to a motion, actually, and I'm not hearing any objections. We're not asking for further clarification on the internally lit black letters or anything, or any other information. So I thought would someone like to make
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, regarding the application of number 1304 of Darcy Roy of National Sign Agent for Mitchell Auto Group, owner, for site plan amendment and sign permit on property located at 416 Hot Meadow Street. I move that we make the following referral to the Zoning Commission, that the Design Review Board finds this application substantially consistent with the intent and principles of the guidelines for community design, and recommends approval, although we would encourage the applicant to put their street number on if they can incorporate that into the design.
Yeah, good.
I'll second that.
We have a second, Bill Gardner. Any comments?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Just the design consideration, the Design Review Board took into account the fact that it is an internally lit sign. However, we felt strongly that in this particular case, given the history of the previous sign, given the type of business, the location, and so forth, that it would be appropriate to have this internally lit sign in this particular case, which is not to be considered as a precedent for any future ones. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item.
I have some.
Okay, thank you.
He signed the application. He signed the application.
You're already behind schedule here.
I'll be fast.
No, you won't. Application number 1308 of LADA PC Land Planners Agent for St. Catherine Sienna Church owner for a site plan amendment for the expansion of the existing wetland crossing and parking modification on property located at 265 Stratton Road, map C11, block 406, lot 021, zone R40. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Am I okay here, or do
Yeah.
I need to be at the podium?
Well, you're going to be on camera, so ideally, if you could just
The other
rotate.
side of the board.
Yeah, on the other side of the board, and rotate that side.
Excuse me, putting my back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Terry Ann Hahn, LADA PC Land Planners, we're the land planners for the project. St. Catherine's Church is located on Stratton Brook Road and is an existing church. The facilities, the existing church faces here. There's an existing large parking lot. Essentially, you come in this direction and then go into the parking lot and you exit in this direction. The rectory is here. In the middle of the site, there is a wetlands that runs north-south, and then across the way is a mowed field. Over the last year or two, the parking lot has been overfull, and we're finding that parking is occurring in places that we prefer that it would not occur, mainly on the road. And so we're looking for alternate locations for additional parking. We looked at a number of different locations and came to the conclusion that what we're really looking for is some overflow parking, and are looking to develop a parking area in the rear, across the wetlands, that would be located within the field, very minimal grading. It's within 5%, so it would be essentially gravel with a small paved turnaround using the existing wetland crossing. We've been in front of the, in the wetlands, and we have got our approval for that. In addition, in order to accommodate this, what we're doing is eliminating some of the parking spaces that were near the church to create a new drop-off and circulation pattern here in this particular area, and to create some sidewalks to bring people from this area into the church. At the same time, the church has been sort of looking at their long-term use of the overall parking lot, and what they have right now for lighting is they have lighting at the front of the church, and they have two very large floodlights that are located at the front of the parking lot. They would like to remove those floodlights and put in shoebox lights that match the ones that are in front of the church. And these would be slightly higher, but just around the perimeter. So these would be at 18 feet. These are currently at 12. There's some minor parking lot changes over here. For example, this entry is a little small. It doesn't meet the 24-foot width, so just widening that up a little bit. And there's some concern about coming in, parking in this area and coming into the rectory, so would like to just create a small drive that would allow a car to come up and drop somebody else off the door instead of having to go up the slope steps. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could do it short.
So you did get inland
Yes.
wetlands approval
Yes.
on this for the entire project?
Right, and one of the things that was important about that is that we did consider a wide variety of alternatives.
Yeah.
This drive is a one-way system. Basically, you're coming up to a stop, just checking to make sure, and then going through. Same with the other direction. But we felt that that was appropriate to mitigate the wetland disturbance because, for the most part, everyone's coming in at one time, and then they're all going out at the same time, so we not have too much cross-traffic. So we felt that that was sort of an appropriate response.
So the lighting would be extended, of course, then?
The lighting will be extended into this area here and stop.
Oh, okay. So
It's not intended to light the back area, just the sidewalks.
How did you come up with that number of spaces for as expansion parking?
We were just looking
You
to
just
see
wanna
what
max
fit
it
in that general area.
So you want as many as you could?
Yeah, the idea would be sort of long-term planning. The church is growing, and we're just, I think they'll probably install it in pieces, but we're just trying to see what we could fit in. It really was no more scientific than that.
The total number of spaces here.
The total number of spaces is 237? 87. 276 total.
New and existing?
Right, total. Yeah.
What is the existing?
Right now, it's 150. 151, I think, is current.
So 151?
Yeah, we're removing some of the pieces out here, and then we're picking up these. So this is 141 back here, or 143.
So basically, not doubling, but coming close.
Right.
Okay.
Yep,
And the current lot is paved, but the new one is not.
that's correct.
All right, so it won't be striped either, so you won't necessarily
It's
get...
not as efficient as 143
Yeah, so you
spaces.
won't necessarily get that many.
Correct.
If we were to, if we were to approve that area, would it be possible without coming back through zoning to pave that gravel parking lot without approval?
Well, first off, it is within the 100-foot upland review area.
Okay.
So anything that would change would require a conservation commission, which would then be a site plan modification, and then we would be back.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
All right, so they didn't give you approval for paved?
No, we didn't ask for it either. Well, this area right here is paved, so that if for some reason you have to come in here and do a fire truck or an ambulance or something to turn around, and there would be the ability to do that.
And I noticed in the application, I looked online, so it was a little tough to see, but we're going to introduce more planting in a wetland area, and I just wondered where that was. Somewhere along the, I know it's near the parking area, but I wasn't sure where.
There's planting that's over in this area over here.
Yeah.
That it's just right along the edge of the wetlands is habitat planting. There's also meadow seed mixes that are going along this area, you know, on the disturbed edge.
Yeah.
There's also off the edge of the gravel is a small bioswale where essentially the runoff is coming in.
Yeah.
There's will be large rocks along the edge here, and then you're going into this limestone swale just to be able to infiltrate down and change the pH. It's a habitat improvement and water quality improvement.
I thought there was a specific area though that actually talked about being fenced off that was
Over here.
exchanged.
This is the wetland enhancement area.
Yes,
right
right.
now, this area is being mowed for wetland enhancement. This will be the construction fence. It is currently wetland soil. It was part of the overall mowing. That soil, that area there will have construction fence. There's some planting that goes in here, and so the wooded wetland will expand to the edge of the wooded wetland soils.
Okay, all right. So it was just temporary fencing then? Okay.
Yes, temporary fencing. No, not long-term
Yeah,
fencing.
okay.
How much of this will be visible from, say, Stratton?
Well, for the most part, very little grading is changing here, so you can see that there's a field back here, but you can't really, you know, it's not a dominant feature because the woods, especially when their leaves are on, it's pretty dense.
So that is dense there.
Yeah.
So it really would be concealed.
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, Christmas, if there's no snow on the ground, you will notice that there's cars parking here.
Yeah. No, I just wondered if there was a significant difference in grade from the main roads.
No, this is 301. This is lower. This is up at 310. The road is at 310. This is all 300, 301, 302. So it's technically lower than the road.
And from Route 309.
309 up here is 304. 304. So it's about. This is all flat.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not even sure you would ever see it go through.
All I know is that when you drive through, you know there's something behind the trees.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't know that you would know it as a car place. You know what I mean?
Right.
All right.
I have no problem with this application at all.
All right, John. Last
The
comment.
new parking lot is
Yes.
identified as overflow parking.
Mhm.
When you combine them, you virtually double.
That's correct.
Right now, how does that total compare to the capacity of the church itself?
Well, okay, hold on. When the original parking configuration was set, it met the requirements at the time. I think what's happening is that we're getting two, instead of one person per family driving, we're getting two parents. So it's not that we're adding capacity to the church, we're just dealing with what the current trend is for how many cars come.
So we're having a family come in 2 cars.
Yeah, you know, because they're going to go in different directions afterwards and things like that.
Again,
But I think the answer to your question is that potentially, if you judge the amount of square footage based on how many spaces were available, I think the general assumption would be that you could get more square footage because you now have parking capacity.
But
But
one other way
we're not asking for
one
that.
other way of asking, based on the code requirement, what's the
It far exceeds the code requirement.
Byram, do you have
Yeah, to your hand, there's one section in the guidelines about parking that talks about planting no more than 10 spaces without a
Yeah.
landscape parking strip. Could you talk a little bit about why you did or didn't do that?
Well, we didn't do it primarily because we were going with the gravel parking, and one is a one lane, in other words, one drive, 2 spaces. We could do it here, but we felt we were disturbing more of the area. It's already existing woods on both sides that are vegetation. We're essentially, other than this area, not taking any trees down, so that you have an existing wooded area.
maybe one other way to look at that would be when you do come back for paid parking, that be a requirement.
No?
Yeah, I would think certainly if it's
Yeah.
big,
Sure.
that's important.
Yeah, that-
because
that would
of
make
the
sense.
whole heat sink thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move this on. Anybody have any comments, objections? Please, again, I'm not hearing any proposed changes except for the I guess it could be a design consideration. Then about the requirement for landscape islands within the parking area. Once you come back to for a paid application, pavement application. Would someone make the motion?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the application 1308 of LADA PC Land Planners, agent for St. Catherine of Siena Church, owner for a site plan amendment for the expansion of the existing wetland crossing and parking modification on property located at 265 Stratton Brook Road. The Design Review Board finds this application. I move that we make the following referral to the Zoning Commission, that the Design Review Board finds this application substantially consistent with the intent and principles of the guidelines for community design and recommends its approval.
I'll second that.
Any other comments? All in favor of the recommendation for approval?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So it's unanimous. Just one design consideration that to be consistent with our design guidelines in the future, if and when you come back for paved parking as opposed to gravel parking, that you take a look at the guideline requirements for landscape islands within the parking area. And with that, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry, for being brief. Item number 3 is the application number 13-10 of Great American Donut, Inc. Agent for Thomas S. Antonio, trustee, owner, for sign permit for Dunkin' Donuts on property located at 1193 Hopkins Street, map 105, block 412, lot 001. It's a zone B2. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair, Commission members. My name is Andrew Park, professional engineer with Kratzer Jones and Associates. I'm here this evening with Scott Fanning, representing Great American Donut as well. We're here this evening for a proposal to relocate the existing drive-through sign at the Hop Meadow Street Dunkin' Donuts and replace it with a new menu board, a new larger menu board. The site is located along Hop Meadow Street. This is the Antonio's restaurant, and the existing Dunkin' Donuts is the end cap of that building, as you're probably familiar with. Presently, the menu board is on the side of the building, as was permitted by the site plan. And for improvement to the internal operations, we'd like to relocate that menu board over towards the island here, and that would improve the queuing and the separation between the order operations and the pickup operations. The menu board, the new one, would be screened. We've proposed 4 arborvitaes along the back of the menu board to screen it from view from Route 10, so that would provide a natural buffer screening along the back of the menu board. The sign is proposed to be externally illuminated as indicated on the plans. The existing menu board is 24 square feet, and this proposed menu board is 34 square feet. I've included in the bottom left corner of the plan the signage calculations that demonstrate that this 10 square foot increase still is within the allowed total signage for the property. Brings the total signage to 272 square feet, whereas the total allowed is 274. The details of the sign have been shown. We've got a call-out detail of that. It has the corporate colors as shown. Again, it would be externally illuminated and screened. And we hope that this replacement of the menu board would help with the drive-thru operations. With that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions, as well as the applicant as well, to try and answer any questions regarding the signs.
Hiram, just a clarification again, it's exceeding 32 square feet, even though the linear footage on the building allows an accumulative total of so many square feet, which this gentleman says he's within. Yeah. He's not dealing with the fact that 32 square feet is larger than 34 square feet is larger than 32. Is that still an issue?
Well, I think we need to figure out how to approach that with regard to the regulations. There's no question. And I don't know if 34 is the magic number, or if it can be reduced to 32. There were a couple of things. I did visit the site. There were a couple of things that I thought were commendable about this fact that it was screened essentially from the road, I think is important.
Mm.
It does improve the queuing operation
Yeah.
on the drive. It's too close to the window, I believe, and I'm no
Yeah.
efficiency expert, but that would seem to be the case to me as well. And the fact that Dunkin' Donuts has actually agreed to externally illuminate the sign, I thought was a marked improvement as well. So if we can work with that 2 square feet, I thought everything else was in pretty good shape.
In the detailed calculation of the signage, the basic signage that we see in color up there is 32 square feet.
That's correct.
The excess are those 2 hangers on either side. So if you eliminate the hangers, then we solve that problem.
Right, and the sideboards are the specials that they have, and you know, those are interchangeable ones. I don't know if that's something you want to talk to Scott as far as.
That looks good.
Would you be willing to eliminate those?
The ones? Yeah. I guess if we have to.
Do they come in a standard size? Is that, I mean, are you trying to fit into a particular standard size?
Well, normally there's an additional wing on each side that's a larger sign, and then there's a smaller one here on each side. We've already eliminated the larger one on each side to bring us into total compliance with the total signage. So these are the standard smaller promotional signage.
My name is Scott Fanning from Dunkin' Donuts. These small, non-illuminated wings just feature monthly specials that we bring in to let the drive-through customer know what we tell them inside, because otherwise we don't have a mechanism for doing that. So that's the only reason for those. And like Andrew said, we probably eliminated maybe 6
square feet on each side.
Yeah, each side.
I think one of our principles has been that on signage that is external, what any kind of sign is, that we encourage or discourage advertising. This is a big advertising sign.
This is a special.
So it's just to minimize that, to bring it a little bit closer to what we desire to hold to as a standard.
Yeah, we would agree.
Having the menu board, I understand how it's essential to your operation, but let's reduce it to as small as we can.
Yeah. Okay, we're agreeable to that.
Is there something similar that we talked about?
The WeTalk sign is very similar, but it has the additional promotional wing signs as well.
So that's in place there.
Correct.
I have a question about the screening. Could you just describe the route that the car, where a car would come in to the right and order? And
sure. Yeah, it would be the same as today. They would enter from Route 10, and then the drive-through traffic diverges here from the patrons that would park on the site, and they would come up along this line here. Today, the menu board is on the building.
Right.
They would order here, and then the pickup windows on the side,
right. And
then they exit through Elderly.
Okay, so my question is, the arborvitae is on the left-hand side, so what is it screening the sign from?
The principal screening that we were trying to achieve was from the Route 10 traffic.
Okay, but what about the adjacent street, Eli Lane?
Well, there's some trees along Eli Lane, and there are some shrubs here on the island as far as the southbound traffic on Route 10. So that provides some measure of screening as well. Yeah, obviously, the front of the sign has to be visible to the patrons in order to utilize the sign.
Well, that's why I was asking, because it seems to me you might need some evergreen sign and screening, you know, kind of mid-level to the height of the sign on the right-hand side as well, on the Eli Lane side.
On the other side of the driveway?
Yeah, on the side of the,
You need something lower at about 4.5 to 5 foot, or 3.5 to 5 foot, which is the eye level of vehicles moving along.
Yeah, you can do arborvitae again, that's fine.
Yeah, I do have a view from that direction, albeit it's a little fuzzy here.
Right.
But you do have some of these trees, and these are some of the shrubs, so the sign would be in this area here.
Well, and that illustrates your point.
Exactly.
So it's some low-level shrubbing on the.
You need something to screen from the.
So in between those 2 trees?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
This area here.
You know, something evergreen.
We might put some additional screening.
Right, additional screening.
And it could be the same plants that you're already proposing to use in the backside of the sign.
Okay.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Any other comments? I assume there are no nuisance issues like noise and it's
There's the same as it is today, but it's
the same as there today.
correct.
All right, would someone like to make a motion on this with,
We don't want to do that with retreat.
Well, I don't have it.
Sure.
Which one do I do here? Talk about it?
Agree.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the application, where are we? Number 1310, Great American Donut, Inc. Agent for Thomas S. Antonio, trustee for a sign permit for Dunkin' Donuts. Do I have to include anything else? Oh, property located at 1193 Hop Meadow Street. I move that we make the following referral to the Zoning Commission. The Design Review Board finds this application substantially consistent with the intent and principles of the Guidelines for Community Design and recommends approval with the additional landscaping of evergreen shrubs for screening on adjacent to Eli Lane.
is there a second?
We also take natural size.
I'll second.
What about the
Okay.
side signs? Yeah.
Second by Kevin, any comments?
I thought we were also asking to have the removal of little side signs.
Yeah,
Additionally, I'd like to amend that.
yeah, amend it and then we'll have a second.
Okay, amend that to include the two side signs, the small mini extender gel signs to be eliminated.
I second that.
Okay, just one comment, just for clarification again. This is really an approval with two modifications. Recommend approval with two modifications, as just cited.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
Item number 4 is the application number 13-11 of ES Park.
Yes.
Agent for Robert G. Holloway, owner for a sign permit for Twinkle Nail and Spa on property located at 1386 Hop Meadow Street, map, it's like I-05, block 439, lot 004D, zone B2. Welcome.
Hi,
Just introduce yourself for the record.
my name is Max. I like Mead Park. I'm here to brief you about our sign. I will be the presentation day after our park. So, can you explain it about our signage?
This is the information we received. Yeah, just elaborate a little bit on the material, any other things you think pertinent to this.
The size of the sign is a 2 by 2 feet by 10 feet, exactly identical sign that was there before.
2 by 10 or 2 by 12?
12. Exactly identical, exact color, exact back paneling size, 0.05 millimeter aluminum panel behind the sign. It's got a maroon color, identical color to the rest of the shop that is there right now.
So this is consistent with all the other signs?
Yes,
That's
exactly.
part of
Coloring, shape, the height of the sign,
everything is consistent?
everything. No lighting,
Okay.
very simple. I was told this is going to be a very simple thing.
So I guess, have you seen it, Harold? Have you seen the others? So this does conform in its size and development. Does anybody have any concerns about the graphics on it?
What are the vinyl stars?
Oh, the vinyl stars. That's our store shop's logo.
Okay, and where is it on the sign?
Oh, it's, well, that's kind of fade away. It's a fade away. Here's the picture.
Oh, you can see it right now? Yeah, no, okay, on the bottom. Oh, I see.
Where are they?
So what color are the stars?
Silver.
So, okay.
Silver.
No.
orange, yellow, purple colors. Different sizes.
You might as well see.
Thank you.
Is there only one side or is there
Okay.
multiple?
It's very identical to the size to our neighbors, rest of the plaza.
And the lighting is the same as it was?
Oh, I have no lighting there. I mean, yes, there was lighting.
Yeah.
Just above?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was in this location?
I believe it was a computer lighting store.
Okay, just so I know which one it is.
Right next to Harvest Cafe. Because that was vacant for over a year. And we finally took over.
Okay.
Willing to make a motion?
Yes, please, Charlie.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the application 13-11 of AC Park, agent for Robert G. Holloway, owner for sign permit for Twinkle Nail and Spa on property located at 1386 Hot Meadow Street. I move that we make the following referral to the Zoning Commission that the Design Review Board finds this application substantially consistent with the intent and principles of the guidelines for community design and recommends its approval.
I'll second.
Second by Kevin Gray. Any comments?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I've said this before when we're talking about or looking at unified signage. We would like to have pictures of the adjacent signs in the area for our own comparison.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of the things we do request when you come for an application, it's in our guidelines and so forth, is that photograph of the existing building so we have a sense of that it is consistent with the signage. I mean, I did ask Hiram if he has seen it, and it is consistent. But this is something where we have to express each time. Thank you. So we have a motion, a second. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous then.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck. Item number 5 is the application number 13-12 of Tony Giorgio, owner of Dorset Crossing LLC, owner for the sign permit for St. Francis Care New England Urgent Care on property located at 30 Dorset Crossing Drive, by I-04, Block 403, Lot 013, Zone PAD. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening. I have some packets just in case you all have them, so these are just extras. I am Tony Giorgio, most of you know, and I'm here with what I hope is a relatively straightforward request.
Thanks.
We currently have, and the documentation starts with the proposed sign. It should start with the existing sign, so if you'll just turn to the third page, it'll make it easier for us to follow along. The existing sign that was approved is, according to your regulations, 32 square feet. It has 3 lights above it. It represents about 2.8% of the entire gable end of the building. And it represents what typically happens when you ask a committee to design a horse, you come up with a zebra. Everybody wanted their logo on this building, and in order to do it within the 32 square feet, we ended up with a multiplicity of colors and a little pimple on the end of the building. And not to anyone's surprise, people drive right by and don't even know there's urgent care there. And this is all about urgent care. The idea is that people have an awareness that if they have an emergency, they can get there and it easily can be found. We've been unsuccessful with the state of Connecticut to put signage on Route 10 as it relates to emergency care because their regulation says that all the employees of the emergency care, urgent care must be employees of the hospital. It must operate under the hospital's license and so forth. And while these are all professionals, they're all doctors, they're all PAs and so forth, they are not employees of the hospital. And we can't somehow get the DOT to understand that they perform the same services, but because of their classification, so far we've been unsuccessful. I don't know whether that's going to happen. I'm sure you've seen those blue signs along the road that say urgent care, emergency care, and so forth. The other issue is emergency care. Is it really urgent care? So Dr. Gutman, who's working very hard to make this successful, and he is being reasonably successful, has been concerned about the fact that he's not getting the visibility that he would like to have, and he's not getting the reaction because people say, I didn't even see your sign. So I sent them back to the drawing boards and wanted them to consider what we thought all along made sense, namely St. Francis Care, urgent care. And they came up with, once again, a combination of St. Francis Care, New England Urgent Care, 2 additional lights. This particular sign is 64 square feet, representing 5.6% of the entire building. I'm asking you to consider, given the size of the building, the sign, etc., to look at modifying the requirement of 32 square feet to 64 square feet. And it's primarily driven by the fact that the emphasis upon the urgent care is important. We were able to get rid of some of the logos. St. Francis obviously has its logo. New England Urgent Care is a component, and that was the best I could do. I mean, I wish we could have just 16 by 2 and everybody be happy, but I can't do it with the emphasis on urgent care and the fact that he wants his name. So that's where I am. Nothing more profound than that.
Is his name New England Urgent Care?
Yeah, I always found that confusing. Ever since you first came in, I always thought it was 2 different businesses. Even when I went in looking for it, it still was confusing.
Well, I've agreed to let him put a sign on the panel of the door, so at least it says urgent care hours of operation. We now have a cardiologist there. We have the lab, the behavioral health. I mean, it's beginning to fill up, and we're trying to manage the amount of signs. I mean, St. Francis is the primary tenant. He represents a reasonable piece of the pie, and he's being very successful in what he does. I mean, this particular site is growing pretty rapidly, but my frustration, quite frankly, is probably the same frustration you have. I hate those sandwich boards that are out in front of the building in orange and red. And his argument is, people don't know where I am. So I don't have anything profound to say other than this. They've all agreed to it. I told them I would come in front of you to see if we could get it approved. And the trade-off is he's got to remove all the stuff that runs along the road.
I think the 32 square feet applies to freestanding site signs, not signs on the building. As long as the square footage is within the building requirements, which is a separate calculation, no problem with that.
I think it is within the building. I mean, the building, if you take all the sides, it's significantly large. But for whatever the reasons, when we were going through the process initially, we were told 32 square feet was the maximum sign. And that's why you ended up with the pimple.
Yeah, I don't think that applies there.
You could actually split that sign in half, then you'd have 2 signs that would comply with the 32.
I know, but I was...
I think to make it more confusing is it looks like 2 different businesses.
Right. To be honest with you, they had it originally 2 signs, and I vetoed it. I said 1 sign, separated out with a line. The colors are basically the colors that we had before. Well, we've gotten rid of the brown and the green. It's the same kind of construction. The acrylic that you've approved in the past with the embedded lighting and lettering and so forth. It's PVC. I mean, it is essentially it's what should have been done to begin with, to be honest with you.
The only other thing I would wonder about or encourage is making urgent care italic slanted letters that look more like an emergency.
Well, I can certainly run that by them, but
I mean, it makes it look more urgent. You know, we're speeding along.
Little winged feet, too.
Yes.
it's a very interesting process when you're dealing with an organization like St. Francis, and then you've got an entrepreneurial emergency room doctor who's developing a nice business, and they want to make happy, but it's really very difficult. I mean, that's about the best we can do at this point.
Well, as you all know, I have personal interest in urgent care. The issue or this business of urgent care is new, right? And although we discourage advertising, as you well know, this to me is comparable to any sign that you see anywhere, emergency room ahead or hospital ahead or whatever. And I think we have to look at it in this light, that this particular, even though it's a business, but then a hospital is a business, everybody's a business. This is a site for people to be treated urgently, even emergency. And that should not be restricted in terms of direction, in terms of identification, and so on.
Well, it's the name of the business, though.
Well, and you know, I only wanted it to say urgent care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to get rid of the logo, because the logo and urgent care and everything else is just confusing issues. I even suggested maybe just say NE urgent care. This is the compromise that I got everybody to agree to, but I do think the emphasis is on the urgent care, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, that's the bottom line here.
I think I don't think there are any issues regarding the wording, the text, the design, the number of colors. I mean, all of that conforms. I think the only issue is the proportional size to the building, and I think that's, as I see it, the one thing that we would discuss. I'm not saying it's undesirable, but clearly.
I think when people are looking for something that's urgent, they're not going to see a small sign. It's just going to get missed. And I think it is important to have it as large as they can.
I just drove by there. Unless you're really, really looking for it, that little sign just goes, you don't see it.
I mean, it's insignificant. It's. I have a lot of pride in the way the building looks and the way the site's looking, and now that we're starting the extension of the road, and we'll be reviewing applications with regard to the apartments, etc. It was a frustration for me, and it's a frustration to have all those signs out in front. We have urgent care on the property, but the challenge is to get them to the property. And the only thing we can do is to perhaps give them a little bit more exposure and give it in the red color so that maybe it picks it up. And that's the best we can do at this point.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Hopefully someday in that neighborhood we would have a sign like we have the big H, a big U, if you will, but recognizable. The location of this sign, given the site, there should be another one down by the entrance. But
I know, but on the other side of the entrance for people who are heading northbound, they can register it before they even see this.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're hoping to be able to do with the state of Connecticut, to get some recognition as they're coming up. I mean, there are regulations as to how many monument signs you can have and everything else. I mean, there are issues here that go a little bit beyond the pale, but ideally, as some of you may recall, there is a 20,000 square foot building which we're hoping will become a surgical center. And I think if we can get people to begin to recognize that not only get urgent care, you get primary care and cardiology and specialists and rehab, you can also get surgery done. The recognition of Dorset Crossing being a medical complex along with a residential complex will begin to grow. But we're limited in what we can do at this particular point in time, but don't say it too loudly, but the real estate business is reviving to some extent.
You're not anticipating putting more signs on this?
No. My preference would have been to just have St. Francis Care on there, but I think he's made a very strong point about the urgent care, and several of you have said the same thing. So we're trying to come up with something that we think will satisfy everyone.
Yeah, they're trying to do two brands, the St. Francis Care and the New England. That's what the issue.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Byron, do you have any comments?
No, I think as Rick pointed out, the sign attached to the building does comply with the regulations, so I have no comments.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion here regarding the application of application number 1312 of Tony Giorgio, owner of Dorset Crossing LLC, owner for site plan for St. Francis Care, New England Urgent Care on property located at 30 Dorset Crossing Drive, map 104, block 403, lot 013, zone path. I move that we make the following referral to the zoning commission. The design review board finds this application substantially consistent with the intent and principles of the guidelines for community design and recommends approval.
Second by Bill Gardner. Any comments?
Yes, just that you said site plan, not sign permit.
Yeah.
Oh, sign permit, okay, yeah.
Okay, with that correction, Bill seconds. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd just be interested if the board has any comments that they might want to put on the record about a sign out near the road for the benefit of the DOT as they consider this matter. I don't know that if you have a specific design that's been.
Well, there's a standard.
There's a standard blue sign.
Right.
Yeah,
Standard rectangular sign.
They have a whole page of acceptable signs, and they're all blue and white, and they basically are the same size. They do not have a sign that says urgent care. They have emergency care with an arrow, but they don't have a sign that says urgent care, and we're trying to get them to understand, as John mentioned, that the way the medical industry is going right now, to get more services away from the tertiary care hospitals is the only way you can manage cost, and you can manage populations, which is supposed to be part of this accountable care organization under Obamacare. But the state is moving very slowly on this, and I know there was a meeting at our complex a couple of weeks ago with folks from the DOT and folks from the hospital and folks from urgent care, and I think that somebody went from the town to try to get this worked out. I mean, it's essentially something that we can't directly influence, but we can certainly ask for it. That would help tremendously if we could have something on either side going north and south, because I think it will just resonate with people when they drive by, and then when they need it, they're not going to say, now where the hell is that place?
Right.
But I appreciate your support, and we'll keep working on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next item is discussion of possible vote draft policy for stormwater management and drainage design guidelines.
Did this get posted on your package or not?
Is this online? I didn't see this.
If I get them to agree to remove New England, do I have to come back?
No.
Less is okay.
Oh, less is better.
Thank you.
This is just a draft policy. You can see by the date on it that I drafted it some time ago. This really is a result of the fact that we did the low impact development stormwater regulations originally for the town center. And we're just sort of gradually, and perhaps too slowly, trying to get this incorporated and ingrained into the whole review process. I run this by the town engineer. It talks about the low impact development stormwater management techniques that we developed along with to go with the design guidelines. And we'd really like, and I don't necessarily expect you to sort of act on it this evening, but we'd like you to take a look at it and see if the board would consider endorsing this as a policy as we review site plans. We're trying to get developers as they come in to look carefully at the low impact development stormwater techniques and use them as much as possible. For example, we talked to the LADA when they did the design of the parking lot this evening and asked them about LAD, and so they said we'd really like to use some of those techniques, and then it came to my attention that it wasn't a paved parking lot anyway, and that they had in fact looked at those guidelines. So we thought that that was a good start to do that. Eventually, we'd like to do it a bit more formally and incorporate those by specific reference into the regulations, so that that's part of the review process. Right now, if we can just get this adopted as a policy, we can start that way. The Conservation Commission has agreed to do that as well. On Monday, I plan to ask the Zoning Commission to do the same thing, so that if you want to take a look at it, and perhaps at your next meeting decide whether it's something that you either have any more questions on, or you'd like more details on, that's fine. There are 6 or 7 pages that go with this. This is just the sort of the policy itself. The actual design guidelines, I'm trying to work up a statement that makes them clear right now. You know the documents on the town website that we currently have, and there's a lot of diagrams and things that go with that. And I don't think reproducing that, for this purpose is necessary. But just to adopt the policy is what I was trying to get to this evening. So hopefully you find that an improvement on some of the things that we've done in the past. Paving from wall to wall is not desirable for anybody, no question about that.
Well, we can review it then online and,
absolutely,
and maybe take action at the next meeting.
Sure, take a look. Any questions too, just let us know. Happy to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this eventually leads to a similar thing for leads to, as far as the environmentally sound ones.
For leads? For lead?
Yeah.
Yeah, lead controversial.
Yeah.
It
is.
I don't think we ought to deal with this by itself.
Yeah. No, but I'm just wondering if that's the path we're on.
Well, actually, the way the codes are going, leads is going to be almost
mandatory. Right, so
mandatory.
It is incorporated.
Everything, the building code is switching over to lead.
Right.
You're going to find that a lot of this is being incorporated in a lead. It goes back and forth, so probably what, five years or so, I think most everything you're going to look at is going to have lead in it.
Right.
Yeah, an interesting side note is that our building official is actually the head of the committee that's doing the code revision, so we're pretty much on top of where it's headed. And I think it's headed in a good direction. Hopefully people will understand that additional costs will also result in some additional savings with regard to energy and things as well. So we think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'm not sure all the builders will agree at this moment, but hopefully they will. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's going in that direction. Okay, thank you, Howard. An item that is not on the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda very, very quickly and ask Charlie to speak to it. He and I were talking about signage, and Charlie had a good comment that I thought would be, as far as the motion is concerned, good to consider as a board. So, Charlie, do you want to talk about that?
Geez, I wasn't prepared for speech.
You want to stand at the lectern?
And give us your name?
No, totally on that. Okay, I'm just looking, I've got piles of stuff here. I have to hold on just a minute. I have to find my notes.
Byron, here's a copy for you and Janice.
Okay. What I started to think about the other day, and I was looking at the fact that we had 5 sign applications before, so it kind of really focused me, was that in the past, we spent a lot of time, and sometimes we seem to sort of wander off track just a little bit in terms of our trying to deal with signs. And also, I was aware of the fact that after all of our deliberations on home goods, they went ahead and approved exactly what they wanted to do. In other words, we went through we spent quite a bit of time and quite a bit of energy trying to think about the things that are within our guidelines, think about coordinated signs with other signs, and when it all came down to the wire and it went to the zoning board, they simply approved exactly what home goods originally wanted to do. And so it struck me that it might make our life, it might make the process a little smoother if we approached our recommendations in a different way. That number one, if it was in accordance with all of the guidelines to the best of our knowledge, that we use the same thing that we have been using in the past, that we find the application substantially consistent. However, if it does not conform, and this would have been the case for home goods and a number of other cases, rather than either deny it or ask them to come back with revisions, that we simply, since we are an advisory board to the zoning board, that we simply state to the zoning board that we find it at variance with our guidelines, specifically, item, and that we make it a point to try to, as carefully as possible, cross-reference to our guidelines, in other words, page, chapter, and verse, wherever possible. And that we simply leave that as the recommendation, that the design review board recommends that the zoning commission take into consideration the following observations that are at variance with the town's adopted guidelines for community design. We tell them what it is, and we basically turn it over to them. We've advised them, and let them make up their mind. If we find a third case where there are special circumstances which we recognize really do have a bearing and do in fact maybe countermand some of our guidelines as written, or we may find that somebody presents us with an application where we become aware through that application that maybe our guidelines are incomplete or are a little off from what they perhaps should be and what we would like to be, but in fact it's not there yet. That we then come up with a third one where we say that we recognize that extenuating circumstances may prevent conformance with specific recommendations in the guidelines for community design. However, the application still achieves a positive result. With that recognition, the Design Review Board recommends approval with the understanding that these circumstances are not intended to act as a precedent for future unrelated applications.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would have applied to that burger fry, whatever that was.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It gives us flexibility.
It gives us flexibility, but it also, I'm wondering if it was, I was searching for a path that sort of just simplified things and perhaps may in fact improve the relationship that we have with the zoning board and with the community as a whole.
Yeah, what it does, it doesn't set up a conflict.
Right.
We recommend a denial or recommend modifications that they simply don't agree with. That what we ought to do is just pass on observations based on our adopted material. And
Makes sense.
What if it doesn't meet our standards? It doesn't meet the guidelines, even though it's a nice sign. We got to have something there that says that no matter what, it just doesn't meet our guidelines.
Well, I mean,
that's option two.
That's option two, where we specifically list the areas in which it is not at, which it is at variance to our recommendations. I mean, if it is absolutely, if there are 10 things that we can find in our written material, and we can reference those, we list them.
Yeah. We're not denying.
We're not denying. We're making the zoning board aware.
I like that.
Of the fact that we're making the zoning board aware of the problems.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense to add it, enumerating it. So it's not just an arbitrary, you guys didn't like it, why? Well, here's the reason why, because, and I think that adds a lot of teeth to that. Yeah, I'm all for that.
So it's not making a judgment, it's just stating that.
Well, it's an observation. We observed this and this does not meet that. That's what we observed. We're passing this information on to you.
And I like number 3 as well. I mean, that's what I've been talking about in terms of why did we approve this and won't approve that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right here. It's the policy of the board. I like that.
I think it solves a lot of frustration with deliberating about signs, frankly, because it gives us that option to make exceptions and understand why it's still okay.
Do we need to take any action to formally adopt this?
I mean, we could. It's or we can think about it for.
I think it's
But
fine.
just a question.
How you might want to
With
change
the
it.
home goods fiasco, would this have helped?
No.
No.
It wouldn't have made any difference, but it would have perhaps helped us in terms of just the way we dealt with it. And also, I think one of the things that I think we're all aware, is that we need to increasingly be able to point to chapter and verse specifically within our regulations. And if we can't do that, we should probably not be making those comments, because then they become subjective. And hopefully this sort of helps us into that pattern.
Yeah, we just need to ground everything in our guidelines.
Yep.
And be specific about it, and not make a judgment.
I would be in favor if there seems to be a consensus if we could make this,
Okay.
adopted. I would be in favor.
Hiram, do you see any comments on this?
No, the only thing I'd like to look at a little bit, frankly, and I'm not trying to hold anything up, but I'd love to look at it. If you want to hold off till after your next meeting, I'd be glad to provide whatever comments I could.
I don't see any harm in doing that.
And, I mean, we talked this week with some village district people, and the committee hasn't quite made that discussion yet, but trying to make the link between the zoning regulations and the design guidelines is really an important link that we need to try to figure out how to make it a bit more seamless. There's no question about it. So any way I can figure out how to try to do that, I'm happy to do that. So I can talk a little bit more about some of the science stuff I'm doing in a second. But I'm happy to do that. I'd love to take a look at this and see if I can, maybe it's fine just the way it is.
I looked at the motion. Okay, maybe let's hold off action until the next meeting, if that's okay. But I think the motion on the zoning commission was that because what Home Goods was asking for completely conformed to their regulations, they felt almost obliged. I mean, do they see it as of right? That
yeah, I think that's pretty close, and I do. It's one of those things where it's always the type of thing where if the use is a desirable use and everybody wants it to go forward, most people want to see it go forward, I think that they probably feel a little bit more pressure in the direction to approve it than if it were something that were really undesirable use, and they probably would have said, couldn't you do something about it? So I think that that's probably a lot to it.
Even though the applicant's willing to conform a little bit,
well, I had a couple of discussions with the applicant after that, and they weren't willing to make any compromises, regardless of how that it appeared when they were here. So that had a lot to do with it, because believe me, I did try. I talked about all the things that you wanted. There were 3 or 4 things, I think, as we recall. Color of the letters in some situations, and trying to shrink them a little bit, and the brick color was one thing. And I had that discussion with the sign people, and they said that the Home Goods folks were not interested. And actually, they indicated to me who they had talked to and the level in the food chain at Home Goods, and they were not interested in changing it. So I can honestly tell you that I tried. So.
Okay. Did you want to say anything? Any other comments on this? Did you want to say something about
I did want to tell you, I'm still continuing, believe it or not, to work on the in-between budgets, and I actually counted up the other day, just myself, not counting other members of the staff in the department, working on 33 different projects right now. And so it is tough to get things done as quickly as I'd like. One of the things that I really think is important, though, is that we continue to work on these sign regulations. And one of the things that I think is really important, and it's a combination kind of economic development aspects and downtown things that we've done, but these wayfinding signs that I've talked about in a little bit in the past. This week I actually spent some time on a webinar on wayfinding signs in different parts of the country. Some of them are really quite nice. And so I think that's important that we continue with that as well. So again, as I said, I'd like to get your input onto this. I have some materials that I'm sort of sorting down, and again, at your next meeting I'll have some materials I can give to you on a series of different wayfinding things that have been done in various parts of the country. One was Dubuque, Iowa, believe it or not, and it was really pretty nice. And Milwaukee did another great one. I think Tampa did one as well. Now, those are all obviously a little larger cities, but they can be scaled down to be appropriately sized in context for the town.
Is that for pedestrian use?
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's actually three different levels that you look at them, and there are vehicles, motor vehicles, there are bikes, bicyclists, and pedestrians, and 3 different levels. And the types of signs that you use for each one and where they're located, some involve participation with the state DOT, and it's disconcerting sometimes to hear the DOT is not sensitive to those issues. So that's why I wanted to get as much help for Dorset's issue in that case as possible, because it is a struggle. So if we deal with the DOT on some of the wayfinding issues in the town center as well, I think that'll be important to get them on board as well. But I think, you know, for pedestrians, as some of you know, we have some other sign issues right now with some of the business people in town where they want signs that are not allowed by the regulations, and they're interested in making a significant issue out of it. I'm hoping that we can head that off at the pass and sanity will prevail there. We'll see about that. I hope that that's the case, because I do think that would be a bad precedent to a series of additional signs that are not allowed by the regs. Outside the center, you know, maybe it's a little bit more flexibility. I think somebody's comment about the commercial area at Mitchell's, you know, that the way those signs are in that area and the way those uses are, probably, you know, certainly a justified comment. Ultimately, you know, should that not be car dealers and it ought to be actually talk center, you know, maybe that would be really nice too. So we'll see how that works out. But I hope to have that wayfinding material to you next time at your meeting, so plan to get that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Next item is the approval of minutes of January. Approval of minutes of February 12th, 2013. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second by John Stewart. Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Abstain. 3 abstentions. Phil, John, and Kevin. Okay. Any other comments? Motion to adjourn.
Anybody need another copy of the guidelines?
Second. Motion by Kevin, second by John Stewart. All in favor?
Does that have amended pages in it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the number.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.